stuff, but it gets busy around spring break and then just ramps up.
How's that? Is it?
All set?
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, why don't we call this meeting to order? Cynthia is not able to make it tonight, so I'll try to fill in as best I can. It's Wednesday, February 7th, 7:01 in the evening, and this is the City of Albany Public Safety Commission meeting, beginning with a roll call. We could go clockwise. Nicholas Fowler.
Eric Anderson. Eric Rao, and my guest is my daughter, Eva. Evan Church. Shane.
Kate Hennessy. Laura Hawkins.
Brad Lyles.
Kevin Piper. Adam Brennan. Thank you. We have some minutes to approve from December 6th. They were included with our package that was sent out by Rochelle. So any edits, amendments, proposed changes to the minutes of December 6th? And then without objection, the minutes are approved. Any objection? Very good. We'll move to the department reports, and it looks like we have police department up first.
Excellent. Picked up some handouts. Our 2023 annual crime report came out, as well as I printed off a snapshot of January 23, what it looked like last year versus January of 24. I hope to get a comparison. My crime analyst was going to do a comparison from 23 to 22, but it's looked at 24, and so we really can't compare 1 month to 12 because I edited yours a little bit. But in that 23 to 24 in the January statistics, we're not going to beat our homicide rate last year because in January last year we had 3, so we were up to 1 this year already. So, but the year is young. Last year was an unusually high year for our homicides and our aggravated assaults. So while some things went down, like property crime, some few other categories, some of our others went up. And it's not, it only takes a few small numbers when you're in aggravated assaults and homicides to make it look like it's a huge increase. But yeah, just 1 is a huge increase, but percentage-wise it makes it look way too much. So you can read those first 2 lines from the January comparison. What did stand out, and it's a national crisis, is the actual overdose rates that are coming, and Oregon is unfortunately leading the states in overdose deaths and overdoses. Just us, and we had 11 overdoses. Well, in 2023 we had 126 overdoses. We had 18 overdose deaths. That 18 is more than the 4 previous years combined. We went from 11 to 18. And our Narcan uses went from 72 to 155. So we're actually giving out, 100% more. And predominantly the fentanyl exposure is the leading cause. I know it's kind of a plain old record, but it's only a year old, and it's going to keep playing. That's until we get a handle on some of our drug laws and our rehabilitation, our access to good services for both mental health and addiction services. And like anything else, addiction services, while out there, when it's not forced, aren't readily taken until someone addicted wants to go. And that's the unfortunate part. And the not having teeth, not to say that they need to be punished harshly like criminals, but without a forced mechanism, which the courts had, that forced mechanism through drug court and drug treatment, at least put more people in seat for a treatment process. They may not have finished, they may have, tripped up and slid backwards, but it's still a forced process. And we frequently hear those people who successfully complete drug court tell us about it. It's like, I wouldn't have done this, but, you know, I had my feet held to the fire. And so I did it. And they thank us later. They thank the courts later. They can't thank all the service folks later because they were forced to do it. The last drug court steering committee met again 2 months ago. We have another one coming up next month. And a couple came in, they both went through it together. They were both forced together. And they said the worst feeling they had was knowing that there were sanctions over their head to go to this. But they were successful. They got that job, they're buying a house. You know, they're back on track. And that's one of those things that is really a struggle, because we're going to see all of our service industries, whether it's, you know, health department, fire department, paramedics, we're all going to see an increase in service, you know, providing more services. And that service is costly, and it's actually longer. Those services take a longer amount of time for us to deal with, both on our side and the fire side. We can't just go, oh, hey, 5-10 minutes, and they're fine. It's like, no, you're babysitting. Yeah, you're babysitting now for quite a while. Us, not quite as long as fire, but fire definitely has to babysit a lot longer than we do. We just have to send more people. So those are tough. In 23, we actually hired 10 employees, and we've so far in 24 hired a CSO. We have a pending hire right now, and we're down to 1 vacancies plus 2 overhires for our hiring process. That's not going to last because a couple of us are retiring in July, or 1 in July and 1 in August, and the trickle down is going to kind of race through our agency.
What was the attrition in 2023? So that the net, we added 10, 11. What was the?
We really didn't have any attrition. I don't even think we lost one in FTEC in 23. I think we were successful in 23. So we were filling 21 and 22 vacancies.
Okay.
Which takes a while. And then to get them trained on the road, it's between a year and 18 months. So actually our toughest part in 23 was our dispatch center, which was down below minimum staffing by 1. And so we've slowly got all those filled. But again, then with a pending retirement this year of that supervisor, that trickle down effect is going to require several more hires. So, but it's better. We're better than it was, and we're in a better position than many agencies across the state. Our police department is. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of kind of what we've got going right now. The annual crime report. Just if you want to look at the first page or page 2, there's a couple of highlights. When I talked about that, violent crime was 14.7% over last year. Compared to 2022, we had 10 either homicides or attempted murders in 23 versus 2 in 2022, and then again that's a significant jump for us. But in those we also had 2 officer shootings where they shot at officers. Which is extremely rare as well. We don't typically see that type of violence. The overdose deaths were a 63% increase. One of the other crime trends that came out was, unfortunately, with social media and the internet, was sextortion crimes for adults and minors. We had quite an increase in that they're contacting people and inducing them to send inappropriate pictures and then extorting them, but then still sending the pictures out. So that's a hard one to tackle because to be honest with you, it's really it's an education piece on 2 fronts, both by parents and by us. We can say as much as we can, but education and oversight of kids' or young adults' phones and computers is difficult to control. So,
do you have the appropriate law under which these are prosecuted?
Oh yeah. We don't have a shortage of law. The problem is how complex they are and how much time it takes to digitally or forensically analyze a computer, tear it apart and find the right addresses and trace it back to the actual user, and typically these are they're shared items most of the time. So it's a lot of investigatory time for a fairly serious crime. So we do take the really seriously with that one. We have one computer and one phone and tablet forensic investigator each in the detective unit. One's not a detective; he's our crime analyst, but our computer forensics detective is very good at it.
And Fred, that's different than like ransomware, where the perpetrators are anywhere, right? This is a place where people know each other.
They may not know each other, but they get on friending sites or dating sites or any number of sites that you can make, or it could even just be texting. So people get on a group text site, they text back, oh hey, I'm so and so, and they spark up a conversation, and then a few days later they've got a.
So it's not some other candidate from the same school.
Right, no, it's like they meet up Tinder, it's from a lot of times a different country.
Okay.
Which makes it even more difficult when they're not in the same location. The ransomware actually is a completely different animal in that they hijack your product, whether it's your computer or your whole system, and they just want money. And pretty much, if you get ransomware anyhow, you're not going to get it back. I mean, once they get the money, they're not going to release anything. You're better off just shutting it down, and trying to resolve the problem as quick as you can. Limit the damages, so to speak. Having good backups is huge, and a lot of people don't understand why the cost is so high to have backup servers, which are just the normal ones are expensive, but to have backups so that you can revert back at any time to a good time to not lose all of your data, especially financial data with the city. So,
the county's finding that out, multiple counties in the last 12 months.
yeah, to rebuild a couple servers and go back with the time is very difficult. So,
I think it's hard to come back from those cuts sometimes.
we were pretty good because many of our agencies are run under Lynn County, or we're attached to Lynn County as a group. It gives us better rates and coverage, but we also have the ability to pull a plug and disconnect from them so that we aren't hit. And so that's actually, it was good for us. We have to kind of revert to the 1980s style for a little bit when we were on computers, but we made it really intense. So we were only down for about 12 hours. Not really down, but I mean, pen and paper type stuff. We can want to go back to personally. There's a few older people that knew how to do it. Our funded positions, we're still in the below national average. We have 1.1 per thousand. The national average is 2.4 per thousand. That's just, it's always been that way for my 30 years here. We've always been under. Kind of the difference between from really the East Coast to the West Coast. The East Coast typically has higher, more manpower. There's probably a wage difference there. So I don't know if we'll ever get to what they consider a national average, but you always would try. I mean,
Are we comparable to other cities in Oregon?
Well, not really. We're a little bit below, but that's factored in on growth. Albany's been growing pretty good, in the last 7 to 10 years. And with that growth, we also lost big industry. Big industry. I mean, we lost tax dollars that fund that growth, right? And not even though we have some property tax income, some of those bigger companies that pull in a lot of tax dollars or have a lot of tax dollars with them, when those go out the door, they're tough on budgets. So our calls for service again went up, so we're still doing a little bit more with the same amount employees. Fortunately, we had a 2-year trend for COVID. We were down officers. Our proactive calls for service, our self-initiated calls for service were very low for several years, and that's when you don't have the staffing, they're just running the calls for service that are preemptive. They call them to dispatch and need somebody versus our officers out there running traffic, looking for drugs, looking for other criminal activity that might be out there on their own, and being proactive instead of reactive. So we were a little more balanced this year, getting back to normal. So our proactive calls went up a little bit, which is very nice to see. that they're being, proactive, doing proactive enforcement and community engagement. Again, our crime trends, really from our part one violent crimes went up in 2023, and where our property crimes went down. And that's a flip for us. Our property crimes usually stay the same or frequently go up. So I couldn't really put a finger on why that is. One suggestion is that as you get larger, when cities get larger, there's a lack of reporting of smaller crimes, especially theft or theft out of vehicles or burglary and stolen bikes and those type of things. Those tend to peel off because people are like, oh well, what can I do anyhow, right? And so that does happen. I don't think it happens. We don't see it as much as you do in bigger cities, but in big cities, that's one of those things that we see a lot of. They just don't report it. Yeah.
I'm asking a lot of questions.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about what the difference between part one and group A are? If that's an oddball question, I'm happy to take the answer offline or after the meeting or something.
Yeah, if you look at part one crimes like robbery, burglary, stolen vehicle, larceny, and fraud, those would be like part one crimes versus differences between like shoplifting, right? Some more petty crimes. Part one crimes are crimes that pretty much they all report to NIBRs, but we're not talking societal crimes or livability crimes. And the numbers are only as good when you talk like about crime trends and Oregon average. They're only as good because we only have, only so many agencies reported to the feds. Yeah. You get a handful of agencies that don't report that. I mean, it automatically skews the numbers when you're talking 10 to 15,000 crimes a year, sometimes per agency. So it can be kind of skewed. I always take that with a grain of salt of where you're at. That's why I'd rather see our own numbers, our own reporting numbers from year to year and a 5-year trend. This will be 2023 was the first year we had a full 5 years with our new system. Yeah. We can look back and say, here's where we're at. And so when you see the line graph, you can see kind of how we go. And part one crimes per 1,000 inhabitants from, really if you look at like the end of 2017, but 2018 to 2023 are big blue lines that are going up versus what they consider the Oregon average. But again, that's, I think, if I want to say it was, I couldn't remember, 208 or 235 law enforcement agencies in the state last year reported. So, 27 agencies didn't report, right? Or it wasn't in there. So,
no, that 5-year average is helpful too. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we really base our numbers off of what we do. To be honest with you, I think that's the more important thing. How are our grades doing serving our community?
I guess I'm looking at the part one violent crime graph, which is very informative. But if this got a lot of visibility amongst our citizenry, I think this would be the one that they're most concerned about.
Sure.
We're seeing people with violent crime trending upward pretty consistently.
Yeah, in the last 10 years, I would say where we used to go every like 2 or 3 years with a homicide. You're always going to have an occasional sex offense, meaning rapes or stranger rapes and those type of things. More than you are going to be homicides or aggravated assaults. So those creeping up in numbers to about 2000 or 2023 was our largest number. Yeah, it has a little bit of concern to it. But again, I would say if you look at population, we're growing out of that small city. I always call Albany a small city into a moderate to large city. And we have more of an influx, people moving from different areas to our city. And a lot of those are coming from bigger cities. So we're seeing people from bigger cities come in, and a lot of times they bring bigger city problems. So that can happen. Typically, those are probably the biggest highlights were those crime trends. Our trained officers, we should be probably fully trained, other than down one officer through April. I think we have one more coming out of the academy. So, again, that's a relief and has more officers, more opportunity to respond to those calls, and then also it'll drive the numbers up because the more proactive you are, the more officers you are, the more proactive you get, the more cases you create. It's not a lack of activity out there or crime out there. It's just how many you can take. So the more we have, the more we're going to see it rise. That doesn't mean it's a negative, that it's a jump. It just means they're active and they're doing their job. If it spiked, beyond our control where we needed 10 more officers, then I'd be like, okay, we have a pretty good handle on it. Things we're working on, other than retirements and filling a few things, we're also working on a speed enforcement red light program. That's pending contract review. We'll be working through that with Red Flex. We already have our red light camera. We'll have 3 other cameras that were situated in your school zones, and a lot of that for speeding in the school zone areas. And then we are also, hopefully by March, looking at leasing some space for a substation on the east side, which also will help our response times, because if y'all have driven through Albany between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. or 2 p.m. and 6 p.m., it takes you 15, 20 minutes to get to the other side of town. Well, not that it doesn't take a police car that long, but we're still driving with due caution. Even if we have our lights on, it's still a 7 to 10 minute response time. And fire's the same way. They're going to be ultimately very safe. So we're actually going to lease a space out at Coastal Farm business offices. And it just happens to be that Walmart is our leading response for property crime, some of our thefts and shoplifts. So we'll hopefully maybe have a little bit of visual deterrence as well. Eventually, you'll see a couple patrol cars parked on the looks like it'll be the west side of the building facing Walmart. So a little bit further back from the front, but it's their business offices. So we're entering into a contract to lease that space, at least a small space, so that we can have computers and they can type and they can download the videos and just remain out there, break room, bathrooms and stuff. And it's a very cost-effective lease for us. So yeah, I mean, we were shocked. We were looking at other stuff, and yeah, it was very great, and the person was very gracious to let us just virtually move in for free almost. So
presence out there might help Coastal Farm also shoplifting and stuff.
Oh yeah.
We have a meeting upstairs called the Reno Room for that same person.
Oh yeah. He's a very generous business person that really looks out for the city. So that being said, those are some of those current things that we have in the works as well right now. So there's others, but those are kind of highlights.
Further questions for KPD? Thank you very much.
You bet.
On to fire.
Okay, so I'm going to do my best to be brief, be bright, be gone. Is the 3 B's I'm going to do. And hopefully I'm not going to be boring. So I'll throw that last one in. I know it's going to be tough.
Good.
Okay, so regarding the report you have in front of you, I'll just briefly go over a couple items because there's really not a whole lot to call out other than to note for total responses. We actually started July and August fairly busy, but then things kind of really slowed down for us. And then as you can see in January, which I'll get to the details of the ice storm, let you know what we responded on. Things picked up in January. Our response times remain relatively stable, so that's good. So are the number of fire and life safety evaluations that we're doing. Community paramedic, we're still having lots of contact with community members, but like I've mentioned to you before, that position has evolved and now plays a larger role in the city's effort to address houselessness. She hosts regular meetings here at Station 11 where she's trying to get the different stakeholders involved and everybody on the same page. And she's doing a fabulous job. I joked with her today. After every meeting, Lynn County Commissioner Will Tucker calls me and tells me how appreciative he is of Hillary and the job that she does. So she's doing a bang-up job. Let's see here on the back sheet, nothing to point out to you. Same typical calls that we go out on. Really, if you have questions on that, I'll just go into some highlights of what's going on in the department. Some items I think you might find interesting. So I missed the last meeting. I was at a community wildfire protection plan community meeting, which was held in Sweet Home. It's a document that the county owns where we talk about, where we identify risks from wildfire in Lynn County and what we are going to do about it. So really well attended by the public. Good meeting. Well, going back a meeting before, I might have mentioned to you, I had a serendipitous encounter with a gentleman who receives money from the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office to do fuel mitigation projects. And he, I've lived my time in management being opportunistic and looking for, when I hear something, I try to apply it to, well, is that something we could use? Would be beneficial to our community. Well, engaged with him, going to jump forward to 53rd Avenue, which is all sorts of different names for 53rd Avenue. We call it Animal Kingdom in our department. I'm not sure what Animal Kingdom. I've heard Critter Flats is another term for that area. And if you're unfamiliar, all the streets have animal names in the neighborhood. But Kevin, do you know how many homes there are in the neighborhood?
800.
Okay, so 800 to 900 homes with one way in and one way out of that neighborhood, and it's surrounded by green space. Green space is growing right up against people's fence lines. So anyway, we proposed to this gentleman, what about this for a project? To clean fuel back from the fence line 100 feet. Also to do some limbing of some of the trees to minimize the fuel load if fire were to ever get back there. And it met all the criteria. We then brought in the city forester because there is a protected vine back there that grows, so we have to navigate that. Well, then the next hurdle that we crossed since the last time we met, was probably that gave us the most pause, and that was what the HOA would think. Because if you follow city happenings, there's a lot of controversy between the neighborhood there and what the city is doing with the property owner. And so we were worried we were going to get caught up in that. So, but we met with the HOA and told the HOA what we were wanting to do, and they were really thrilled. So we still need to do a little bit more education. Well, actually, literally, your street is where we want to start. With some door flyers before we get the project going. And there are a few other questions, a really engaged HOA. I mean, they were asking questions about beaver habitat, about if we partnered with the Calapooya watershed folks. And so there's still a couple of things we need to do, I think, to really button it up. But looks like that's going to happen. Let's see here. Other little nuggets are single role ambulance, which to back up, that's our peak activity ambulance, is up and running. So we've hired people and they are running on calls. Let's see, other Okay, fun facts for the ice storm. I was asked about that beforehand. So this is from January 13th to January 17th. We responded on 266 calls for service over those 5 days. That's 60% higher than what we normally respond on over the same time period. We had 65 fall injuries, lift assists, or trauma injuries related to falls. This was a little slower. We weren't quite as busy as December of 22 when we had 85 calls on that one day. Our busiest day through this span was 70. And I am amazed at the number of people, even though we were trying to just message the heck out to people to stay inside, that would go out and would walk around in the ice. I'd love to say my family wouldn't do something like that, but my stinky dad texted me a picture of him in a down tree across McDowell Creek. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing out there? But I will say we did end up, one of our rural board members should know better from all the reports we did. He went out, he felt we had to take him to the hospital. So just when it's icy, we are no match, our bodies are no match for ice. Here's a good thing. 12 motor vehicle accidents. APD probably had more because there would have been some non-injuries that we wouldn't have gone on. But really, that's a good number, given what was happening. 3 cold-related incidents where people called 911 because maybe they found somebody that was exposed in the elements. And none of which were at Marvin's Garden or areas that maybe, some of our parks that maybe would raise more concern. They were just sporadic around town, but there were 3. And in contrast, there were 3 burns or scalds during that time. The moral of that story, what happened frequently is people would take hot water out to unthaw something, and then as soon as their feet got on the ice, they would fall and spill the boiling water on themselves.
How many burst pipes?
So we had 30 fire alarm activations, most of which all were burst pipes. Yep, so a lot of burst pipes. So on a super positive note, everybody showed up to work. All the people were able to get to and from work, and we didn't wreck anything. We didn't throw anything in the ditch. We didn't hit anything. So our crews just did a fabulous job. Okay, so that's the ice storm fun facts. Awards. We had an awards banquet 2 weeks ago, which was a huge success. And why I bring that up, I'll wait until I give out the annual report. You can see pictures of the individuals who won awards in our department. But there are some people, there is somebody that I gave an award to that you all know. And so we have Officer of the Year, Apparatus Operator, Firefighter, EMS Provider, and Humanitarian. Humanitarian we give, and our people vote on who it is. It's somebody who has put others in front of themselves consistently and is just what the title is. It's just an amazing humanitarian. Well, there's also Chiefs Awards. Chief Crichton used to give out Chiefs Awards, which I actually have still, one that he gave me. I gave one to Cynthia Green. This is my last year giving the Chiefs Award with my pending retirement. And Cynthia not only does a fabulous job with our group, but when I was assistant chief, I asked her to sit on our interview panels. And Cynthia, for probably the last 15 years, diligently comes to all of our interview and hiring processes and sits in on the interview. And she reschedules, she does whatever she has to do to attend. And she provides probably some of the most valuable information we get. Because when she looks at our interview or at our candidates, maybe I've told you this before, she looks at them as how would she feel with them walking into my house to help me or my husband. So that's really, really insightful information. to hear her say that person didn't make me feel comfortable. Because if they're not making someone like Cynthia feel comfortable, they're not going to make a lot of people comfortable. So anyway, Cynthia did. And she was surprised. We invited her to our banquet. She thought it was just a cordial invitation. And then when we announced her name, it was good seeing her surprised. Okay, so we are also doing a lot of hiring, which is, I've mentioned to you before that, it's very competitive out in the fire service right now. And there are departments in the state of Oregon that pay more money than we do, that ask less of their people and give them more time off. So if those three things are more important to you than maybe the culture of our department, sometimes those sleep. And so we're running the risk of losing quite a few people to Salem. Salem's going to a 1 shift on, 3 days off, or 1 shift on, 2 days off, and they pay more money and people don't transfer, they don't work on the ambulance. Thankfully, a lot of people reconsidered and stayed, but we still lost 4. So that coupled with some positions that we just had open through normal attrition, we're in a recruitment process. We actually are trying to steal a page from APD's playbook with the way you do lateral recruitments. And that is lower the barriers as much as possible, make it so simple for people to apply, and quickly turn candidates over. We posted all together, we're towards the end of our lateral recruitment period. We've had 24 applications for laterals, which is surprised us, which is great. We're pulling from all the departments that are smaller and have less resources than we have. Interestingly, though, we're not getting as many successful candidates that we feel we want to hire as we had hoped. We are finding there's really some good gems in there that we've had 3 conditionals out. We'll get probably a couple more on Friday. But we've noticed with our lateral candidates are much more honest about what they want from their employer. And we can't tell them, you're not going to work on the ambulance. You're not going to be up all night writing calls. And so thankfully they're identifying themselves in the process, and so we don't have to hire them. It's usually the newer candidates, they just tell you what you want to hear. Oh yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that. But the laterals have been honest, which is appreciated. So we also have, not only for laterals, but just in normal recruitment for us, things have changed a lot where the labor market's been really tight for a few years since COVID. The gate's been released. We had 97 applications for dual positions in our department. And in comparison, I'd say during our low, we were probably in the 40s. So it's probably fair to say that we doubled the number of applications. So that's really a nice relief to see. So there'll be new faces at Albany Fire Department. And lastly, along the lines of new faces, we are really focusing in on the transition plan, succession plan for 2024. As you know, that I'm retiring the end of June 30th, and Peter Trotzen has appointed Deputy Chief Chris LaBelle to be the next chief. And then, so from there, part of our plan, our strategy was to really have everything lined up to where there's no institutional paralysis, and June 30th is no different than July 1st. So Chris has went ahead and already promoted his successor. His name is Kevin Vining. You'll eventually get to know him. He's currently a battalion chief in our organization, extremely well respected by the troops, extremely knowledgeable. cares about our community, cares about our people, and will do, I think, a really great job. And from that, kind of like Brad had mentioned, there's this whole trickle down through the organization. So we have all sorts of promotions happening, and as weird as it is to be kind of on the outside a little bit looking in, it's exciting to see the buzz that I think is generated from that. And I think it's just healthy for the organization, and people see all these opportunities, and the work that they've done is potentially going to pay off. Another positive note, proud of our people. We're going to be able to do all this in-house. Where a lot of other departments around us can't do it in-house, and they have to go outside to fill these spots. We have trained, capable people that are the right people to do, to backfill what will really be almost a whole new management team by the end in the next 12 months. It originally was going to start with me, but battalion chief bumped up this time, James Smith, Jamie, then myself, then our training chiefs, Scott Cowan in November, and then Ryan Bond, one of our battalion chiefs, is next February. So it'll be an exciting time for Chief Lavelle. Not very often do you get into a leadership position where you're able to build your team, and there's no kind of luggage or baggage that kind of moves on to you. And so it's all fresh ideas. And so I'm excited to see what he can do with the department. So, okay, I was somewhat brief. I'm seldom bright. Hope I wasn't really boring. But anyway, any questions?
It speaks very well of the department that you can hire from within like that. That's an excellent signal of a strong department.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky. Yeah, we are. We talk about, and maybe this is true in your field, it's that all of us people have invested in you for you to be where you're at, and you're not doing your job if you don't have one or two people in your mind that you're investing in. And so don't pay it forward thing.
Any questions for the fire service? And moving along into our agenda, we are at the first meeting of the new year, and according to our bylaws, we need to elect chair and vice chair.
Could I ask for just a point of personal privilege to take a quick break?
Sure. Let's take
Truth be
5
very
minutes.
I already did.
There might be a line.
Okay, so there's 2 bathrooms there. There's another one, and probably one over here.
Very good. So moving on in our agenda is the first item of the new year is the election of the chair and vice chair for the year. And just for background, before I entertain nominations, we did get confirmation from Cynthia that if nominated and elected, she would be willing to continue to serve in the role of chair. And so with that as background, let me open the floor for nominations for 2024 chairperson.
Cynthia. I'll second.
Okay, and as this is an election, we'll continue with nominations before taking any vote. We have Cynthia Green nominated and seconded. Are there any other nominations for chair? This is where no one makes eye contact. Very well. So we have a validly nominated and seconded candidate for chair, as there have not been additional nominations. We can, by unanimous consent, now elect Cynthia Green as our 2024 chair. All those in favor, please signify by aye or yes or some affirmative notation.
Aye.
Very well. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Similarly, entertaining nominations for vice chair for 2024. Do I hear any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Eric Anderson.
And as it's a nomination, we technically don't need a second, and so Eric Anderson has been nominated. Leave the floor open for additional nominations. And hearing none, following the same procedure as with chair by unanimous consent, we would vote now to elect Eric Anderson as the 2024 vice chair. All those in favor signify by aye or yes. Aye. Any opposed? Again, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. That was our order of internal business for the evening. Next item on the agenda is Laura Hawkins, Public Information Officer.
Are doing handouts or anything. My name is Laura Hawkins. I work at Albany Police Department. I am our community engagement specialist and PIO. So I'll just tell you real quick about what I do. All of our programs like Community Academy, Youth Academy, Coffee with a Cop, Safety Camp, all those kind of things. I coordinate all of those and also do social media. Sometimes people think I just do social media, but that's really a tiny portion of my job. And I think I'm supposed to just be talking about social media, right?
You are.
Okay. So, I don't know if you're familiar with our social media, but we really had to, well, about 2018, 2019, people started looking to social media for news. And our accounts, we started kind of ramping our accounts up a little bit because we want people to come straight to us for the news and facts on events. We have between 30 seconds and 3 minutes when an event happens in Albany or anywhere, before somebody is already on social media posting about what is happening. And generally they don't know what's happening, but apparently in social media land, you can just sit anywhere you want and make up whatever you want is happening. And so it's very advantageous for us to get ahead of the story and with some facts. So when COVID hit, it was really our primary way of communicating to quickly to people about what was happening at APD and what was going on, and a lot of people started really watching most social media outlets. So our social media grew pretty well. We've increased our goals are 10% more followers every year, and we've always met our goal. What else? Our strategy in social media is always to be, have the news, have the facts, and have people, when an event goes down, have people come to us for the facts. And in turn, by growing our social media, it's very helpful to us to rely on the public on occasion when we need them. A couple months ago, we had a missing child. She was 5 years old, and they called me and said, sent me the picture at home and said she's been missing for 40 minutes. Parents can't find her. We're out looking. I posted a picture, a little description where we were looking, brief if anybody could help. This is what we were doing. Within 4.5 minutes, that post had been shared over 1,000 times, which is huge. And people came out in droves. I mean, the officers were calling me and being like, "Oh my gosh, we have so many cars out here helping, looking for this girl." Ultimately, she was found within an hour, and she was in the garage. Under the camping gear, she crawled underneath all of that and fallen asleep. But that is when we need the public, and so it's really awesome to have a good following, because when we need them, they are on it. And so sometimes we get made fun of, or we get a little nervous when we do a lot of fun things on our social media. But social media is, people are scrolling, they want to see puppies and kittens and fast things, they don't want to see our stats. So we have to be engaging and quick with little videos and things like that to keep people engaged, so that when we do need them, they're ready to go. Our strategy is twofold. We also are about humanizing the badge and reminding people we're human. And I don't know how many times I get told that officers go out on calls and everybody's angry. It's these people's worst day. And they get there, and then somebody will be like, I recognize you from TikTok, or I recognize you from social media. And it loosens people up. They have something in common, or they make some remark like, oh yeah, I know, I've seen you do this, or I mean, it's some connection, and that is always works in our favor as well. So those are our two main goals with social media, is growing our audience to use them when we need them, and get the news out first, to be honest. I mean, we want to be the place that people go to for information.
And what used to be old-time media, right, was media outlets put their spin on what happened, not what the fire department or the police department needs spin to be. We now have, I frequently get calls as the PIO for the criminal side. They call and go, oh, can you tell me a little bit more about what you posted on social media? Because she gets the first to give our spin the correct way. There's no more, there's no more misconception about what really happened. And I read this in the paper, and the spin wasn't really quite the way it was said. They cut and paste press releases or camera shots, or interviews. They take a 10-second snippet of a 30-second thing. So that's one of those areas for pretty much anything public facing. If you want your message out, you should have social media, and you should be presenting it. And while we still get beat up a little bit of, I'm wasting time making these videos and stuff, but if you really look at the comments that we get from the viewers, that they're really for her. She would be the highest paid person in the state of Oregon if we could.
Yes.
According to our viewers.
If only.
Because it's constantly, that person needs a raise. A raise. I'm laughing my butt off every day watching your social media. But while it's great applause, and she's absolutely, it's irreplaceable. What that shows is that people are paying attention to the city. And so we are garnering support in needed times, whether it's during an ice storm, or whether you find a missing kid or an elderly dementia patient. We have seen a huge increase of support and assistance in that community engagement, and that's what it's about, is engaging the community. People actually, both the other captain and Jerry and I have traveled across the U.S. for work, and people on the East Coast say, oh my God, we love your social media. What do you, and these are people from New York or New Jersey or at our conferences, and people watch. That's a testament to her. She patted me because I censor some of the things that she might
He's
say.
really loosened up. No, more of that. It's too edgy.
I'm not that old, but I am.
Come on.
Yeah, we have to be careful about, poking fun of people, but people want lightheartedness. They don't want it stale. I'm a little stale, but
You said that.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you've ever, been to marriage counseling or heard about the love bank, same scenario. We are constantly putting our love bank that's what we're about, is encouraging social engagement. These are all the great things we do. These are our engagement. This is all the fun things we do. So when things go sideways, we have a little leg up, and we will, I mean, not when, if, I mean, you know, it's gonna, someday somebody's gonna be mad at us, and it creates a little edge for us to have that.
I will say, one of the things I've noticed too is that, and you guys will both, we don't get to say stuff back to people. When people say stuff negatively about us or post stuff negatively about us, we don't get to respond. And we take it on the chin. We're like, they don't know what they're talking about, and we just go about our business. But the nice thing about our social media platforms is that a lot of the citizens in Albany have now jumped in and just said, you guys are nuts. That's not what they do. That's not what they meant. And get off of here. You know, and they really censor the negativity. Not all of it, but most of it.
Most of it. We don't even worry about it. I mean, I know. I never even, I'll see something, I'll be like, oh, they're going to attack him.
You know,
And sure enough, we'll look back in a couple hours, and I'll be like, yikes. So, yeah, I mean, and we leave our comments open. It's just all, they work their issues out themselves. But it has been very advantageous for us. We just had an FBI leader class, which is a pretty elite class, and they use a lot of our videos as examples. And somebody from Texas was in the class, and he said, I don't know how you guys did it, but that single-handedly Albany, Oregon Police Department. He said, I had to come to this class from Texas because I wanted to see this department. And he's like, I didn't even know this was a tiny little town. He was from El Paso. He's like, I thought this was going to be huge. He said, because you don't know how through the whole 2020 and George Floyd, how this kind of cushioned our blows for becoming humans and not looking so scary. I said, well, Brad's the one. So.
Those are, that's probably the biggest flip that I've seen in my career. Engagement with the community. As much as I don't have any social media platforms at home, I don't. My kids do, I don't, and I will never get them. I'm just too old school to ever have them. But that being said, I'm doing it for almost 30 years, old school, about 27. The last 3 really, Laura's stepped the game up and changed us. It is really improved in a lot of that. You know, you get an approval rating for a levy or a fine or a bond or something, and your citizens are in the 70% range of support. That's huge. If you have to worry, I got to worry about passing at 49 to 50%, you're like, oh, geez. And that's a testament to engaging the public and telling what we do and what we do for them. So I'm all in, even though I'm kind of confused.
I know. You're on. You're good. But yeah, our academies, our youth academies are very well attended. We always have wait lists. We talked about it at that class last week, how to get our community engaged in all of these events we put on. And National Night Out, our numbers are, we have between around 40 neighborhoods that are involved in that. And Mesa, Arizona is huge. And he was like, I'm lucky if we can get 20 neighborhoods. And so we have a lot of community engagement, which is very awesome for all. So yeah, any questions about that? I'm no social media expert. I did start this with a 16-year-old daughter that pretty much should get paid. She's now 20, and I pay her in Dutch Bros. So she's leaving for college next year. I mean, she's went to LB these 2 years, so you might see a big down next year.
How do you stay current?
I write.
Yeah.
I'll say something dumb now, and now she's going to be like,
Special context.
right.
So what I presume, so talking about that split between sort of the old school that you're talking about it and social media, I presume that reaching, we still do, I say we, still do media releases, right?
We do, we
Classical
absolutely
media
do.
releases.
We do it in the newspaper, we still do. We do, Twitter, actually, your X, is how we release a lot of news also. Because news outlets, that's how they get theirs. But we do old school press releases through Flash Alert. Before we even do a social, we do that first before we do social media.
But I assume you're reaching different demographics with
Right.
those two things.
So our demographics with Facebook is 40 and older. And Instagram, it used to be the younger crowd, but it's moving up.
That's me, so.
Right. And we started our TikTok account mainly to reach younger people, but that has also grown to all ages. And our TikTok account got really big, almost to 1 million followers. And then they shut our account down. They don't really have to give a reason why. It was a very short email that just said violations, something, their violations, too many videos with weapons.
We use our officers, we do use our officers in most of our videos.
Right.
And
So, community violation, something. But what I've been told later was when you reach 1 million, it's the paid, you have to get paid. And we had been approached many times about how we need to pay, we need to engage in all of these. They wanted us to do commercial, basically all these ads with them. So I think that probably left in disguise.
well, they kick your feet off, start over.
Yeah.
Really? So
So-
you don't have TikTok anymore?
Well, we started over, we
Yeah.
did.
Okay. We gotta start a new account.
Yes, our old videos are all still up, but we started a new account and now we have like 20,000 followers, but, crazy.
Well, and that's kind of the nature of relying on a third-party platform, right?
Right,
We can't set the
100%.
rules of engagement, so we
Yes.
gotta live by whatever it was.
Right.
So my other question, I guess, was gonna be, do you try, or is it feasible to try to reach sort of multilingual audiences that way? Is that a thing, or is that not?
Well, on TikTok, it's all, you can switch it to different languages.
Okay,
And TikTok,
I'm demonstrating my ignorance of all sorts of things here. so-
right, TikTok was pretty handy, even though I know it's very controversial and government agencies probably don't use it a lot. But it was handy because it was so quick. I could take a video and it formats the whole video and it puts a song to it. I mean, it's so easy. It was very user friendly. And
hear Brad talking random.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter only had to show me once or twice, and I was like, oh, I got it. So now I'm learning like CapCut, some other programs, which again, this is a tiny portion of my job, is this videography. So I'm not good. I'm old. So I'm not sure how good I did a video a couple weeks ago, just like on my Mac. It wasn't great, but I'm learning. So I'm trying to really kind of steer away from TikTok a little bit and get more. My lieutenant and I have been talking about maybe doing a YouTube channel, but basically just to use it as a platform. It'd have to be short videos. People don't want to watch a 3-minute video about the police department, so you have to make it kind of funny or edgy or something. He also wants to toy with the idea of doing a podcast, which I have zero skills in. But I'm like maybe people like true crime. We do a little true crime, maybe cold cases.
Or at least that's the format, right?
Right.
Spend all your time on that.
Right, and we probably only do it like once a month or something. But I loved the idea until he was like, well, and then we need to get this, I don't know, then he was talking way over my head. And I was like, oh, I'll Google that later. So not sure about the podcast right off the bat, but I think we're going to start doing a video monthly report of like our stats like this. Like if we can keep it under like a minute and a half, because people might watch that. I mean, when you're on social media, you don't want to read all those stats. It's hard for me to get people. I do these quarterly reports, and I get like 41 people that read it, and I'm like, oh, that was a lot of work for that. So I think in video format, it would be a lot better.
But do you think you might reach a Spanish language audience or a Russian language audience, or is that not? necessarily something that we're interested in, that you're interested in. Even allowing for the fact, I mean, whatever channel you're going to,
Right.
whether that's going
Right.
through video releases through Flash or whether it's going through.
I don't know, Spanish maybe, I don't know about Russian.
I wouldn't think Lane County
yeah.
necessarily has the stats for that.
Right.
No, just thinking about what other
Mhm.
languages are spoken in America.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean.
That's actually a good
It
question.
is a good question.
In fact, doing a TikTok with.
We've done some in Spanish. We did-
Because you got a couple of bilingual options.
Yes,
Yes,
and we
yeah,
have
so,
done
yeah.
a couple in Spanish.
Yeah,
I haven't thought of doing the report in Spanish.
I don't know, I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
The Secretary of State's office does stuff with voting in different languages.
Right,
and
right.
OHA
And I
does
don't
stuff
know
with
if you have
California.
that kind of need or not,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think there's always, if your demographic reports aren't telling you that, maybe it's not there.
Right, right.
Well, you probably refer them on to your website as well.
Right.
So they can switch to these languages.
Yes. But they are missing out on the fun.
We still will do all, she's done some, Lieutenant Pierce does, and I do the criminal side. It's still, when they're active investigations or cases where you can only release just a certain amount of information. Those, right, that's the target of ours is of, hey, we're just gonna give the public just the bare facts of what's gonna happen.
Right.
It's not to sensationalize, it's not to, to entertain, it's to
Right.
provide a factual incident, and facts of an incident that people are in. Yeah, what happened,
Yeah.
why were all the cops are firing and doing all this stuff, and so, yeah, that's still necessary. But again, even that's changed to where we type out what we want them to say.
Yeah.
Or post. They still,
And the problem is fast. I mean,
Yeah.
ours goes out right away. It's gonna be in print in 2 days.
Yeah.
People are already like,
but most media outlets now are pretty much, if you look at the Denver Herald, they virtually have 0 reporters left. And those that are doing it are gathering their information from the internet. They're not walking out. I mean, I used to have a reporter in my office for a half hour a day going through the crime reports every day. And it's changed. The way people are getting their information has changed. I don't want to say we're ahead of it. We're probably as far ahead as many agencies or further ahead, but we're still not ahead of the public. The public lives on their phones.
And a point maybe for both agencies there is the live dispatch that I know some places have. Is that something that the city's ever considered, or is that too big a shift from what we're doing?
Yeah, we will.
Maybe more required than
You
law
mean
enforcement.
the voice?
No, not the scanner feeds that are people put out there.
Like Pulse Point?
Yeah, similar to that, yeah.
We not only have Pulse Point that anybody can download, we also have a feed into our website. So you
Okay.
could log into our website if you heard a siren go by,
Mhm.
and you can see the real high-level
Yeah,
information,
yeah, type of call
medical
and-
emergency, 600 block of Fifth Avenue.
Yeah. I guess I didn't realize that was on the website. I haven't been there in a while. Because that seems to be a sort of counterpoint to another component of that same sort of approach, right?
Yeah, I'm very apprehensive about letting people
Sure.
know what we're doing, where we're doing in time,
Yeah.
and then have to deal with,
Yeah.
either looky-loos
Yeah.
or people poking around and crime
Getting in
scenes.
trouble.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
it's-
That makes sense.
Major motor vehicle accidents can show up because they're going.
Oh, yeah,
And so.
yeah.
There's also a safety component too,
Yeah.
for you.
Any further questions?
Yeah.
Thanks for the update.
you bet.
Good job.
The next item was something I asked Michelle to put on our agenda because if you watched the news over the last few days, the legislative session is considering some change to Measure 110, about which we have spoken at great length in the Public Safety Commission. And perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the latest I have heard is the proposal is to reinstate a Class C misdemeanor for only fentanyl and heroin. And that can then be dismissed if the person goes to a diversion program, is what I understand at this point.
So far.
But I think it's important that we all know there is conversation in Salem. It's probably going to happen pretty quickly if it happens at all because of the short session. And I don't think we are authorized as public safety commissioners to speak on behalf of the commission or the city. But if you are so inclined personally to call a representative or a senator and let them know the issues that we have locally and perhaps make it a Class A misdemeanor rather than Class C, give it a little bit more teeth. I think those kinds of things have disproportionate impact on the legislator when they get a call from a citizen who has some knowledge of what's going on and their community. So, comments, further discussion on that? That's essentially the extent of my knowledge. I mean, I don't know much more, but I have a schedule with Sarah Gelser over later this week that I'm going to chat with her. But again, it's only as a private person, so I don't think we are authorized to speak on behalf of the city or the commission.
Right.
Is APD or doing any outreach?
We've all put our collective ideas together at different locations. In fact, Captain Brown is currently back at Congress this week and is speaking to Congress about these issues in DC this week, and in hopes, again, and that's what the High-Intensity Drug Task Force, HIDTA, he's back there with them presenting about the issues and problems that are going on with these things, and that it's not just a flash in the pan, it's not a fad, it's not, this is real-time problems that we've never, we really haven't seen the likes of. But we've had other drugs around for decades, hundreds of years, that don't add up to the amount of death that we've seen.
Just look at the stats you presented tonight.
Right? We just don't see it. And it's not our product. You know, that's the other, that's, I guess, a key component. This is not ours. It is, the problem is ours, but it's coming to us. And I think it's it has to be a bigger approach from the manufacturing supply end of things. Again, I can't dictate what the government might go out and do with this, but it's only produced in so many places. And that's a problem. But to not have any criminal sanctions, we feel the same way, is that people can have an addiction to many different things. It's and once it's there, it's very difficult. This is extremely difficult to stop, just like it would be for heroin and methamphetamine. But at the rate it kills people, that's where, I mean, at some point you have to draw a line in the sand. And how do you get people to get off them? It's a bigger problem than we realize, or than maybe society realizes, I should say. We realize it, but most of society realizes how big it is.
Well, I don't know how much of a ring of open offers, but I would say that from what I've seen, maybe folks here know more, but there are also a number of bills that are improving behavioral health treatment, improving drug treatment, all sorts of programs. Which of those will survive, which of them will be effective is an open question, but there are folks pushing on that end too. So.
I think the problem though is Brad just mentioned, and the League of Oregon Cities, Oregon District Attorney's Office, Associated Police Chiefs, and the Sheriff's Association came out strongly opposed to the only having a signature because they don't have any teeth to acquire them. Yeah. And that's the problem, is there's no teeth. Yeah. They can't, see misdemeanors, a slap on the
that's just maybe a baby step above
what we have today,
what we have right now.
Not very big disincentive.
No, and see, misdemeanors don't go through, typically, most courts are circuit or district courts where you'll see, uh, drug treatment programs or forced treatment, not in our municipal courts. That's, most municipal courts are so small in the state of Oregon, but that's where C misdemeanors lie. Right? Lie in the courts. And, I'm not saying it was the best way to deal with it in the past, but the sanctions were at least such that people had to, they could be forced to seek treatment.
It's, I think it's a failure. I mean, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's on the cards to repeal it. And
Well-
so there's going to be perhaps a Band-Aid.
But I think, honestly, what I think if they don't choose to make the sanctions, or at least reverse what the sanctions would be, or the crime status of it is, you'll see a request for a review. I don't think we can can't stand an initiative to do that. Yeah. But I was also in the understanding that most of this session is going to be dedicated to trying to resolve this. I know there's a lot of things I just read through the session from our person up there, and there's a lot of things in there that I know this was a focus.
And I know our reps and senators just crave direct feedback from concerned citizens. They don't get enough of that. And so if you are so inclined.
Well, if I were to say so, Senator Merkley will be at Lynn Benton for a town hall on the 13th, from 10 to 11:30. And that's a great way for our citizens to go in and just,
What day is that? I'm sorry.
the 13th, Tuesday the 13th at Lynn Benton, 10 to 11:30. If there was only one question 600 times by 600 people in there, what are you going to do about the fentanyl crisis and Measure 110? If that was repeated 600 times, if there were 600 people in there and the only question they had was what was that, they could get a point across. That's kind of really what it takes.
Any other comments?
I have a question. How much, have you guys seen the uses of xylazine much?
We haven't seen it much. It's popped up on the radar, but we haven't seen virtually any of it.
So I've been reading a lot of reports how a lot of the fentanyl is being cut with that and just make that worse.
It does, yeah. And it may just be how much people can get to as a cutting agent, right, for an additive. But the problem, so much of this comes already pre-formed from south of the border. We're talking hundreds of thousands of pills coming across the border, and so they really don't. There's some powder form now. Obviously, we're seeing a little more powder form with fentanyl, but still, we still see. If you look at our seizures, in our report, the line task force seizures of drugs this year. 5,900 grams of methamphetamine in 23, 45,000 grams of marijuana, 258 grams of BHO or hashish, 1,000 grams of heroin, 1,500 grams of cocaine, which made a resurgence again in 2023, 2,200 pills of fentanyl, and 24,000 grams of fentanyl. That would be a powder seizure. In 2021, we had 10,000 seizures of 10,000 pills, and so it's hit and miss of how many you can find them. We're taking them off more and more in smaller quantities because people are having them in their possession. We're going to more and more overdose deaths. Those overdose deaths are investigated by my drug task force, and that wasn't their initial. That's not their job description. Is to deal with overdose deaths. It's to deal with the trafficking of this product, right? But they're the experts and what to look for in these overdose deaths. So it's eating. Not only is it eating up our people, it's eating up our time and That's, that's the back end of it. And again, it's eating up fire safety's, paramedics' time.
That drug bust in Tigard that I read about recently, is that liquid heroin?
Oh,
Is that a common way that drug is transported or?
it could be,
Second one in the U-Haul.
Yeah, I forget how many barrels of it.
Yeah.
and that's, obviously, those are ones in a career type of thing, so you don't see those very often, and they're pretty protected, hard to find. But most of all of it goes back into, a powder or a tar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's not normal.
Okay.
That's a rarity.
Very good. Well, let's see, our next meeting is April 3 at Police Department. And if there is no other business, and without objection, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Post office got high tech, so we've got cards over here with a QR code on it. You can come by, pick up a card. And the only thing I will say is that